We often dream of the good old days, but history whispers a darker truth. The past wasn't noble, it was necessary, and survival always had a price. Imagine living a life where your hands reek of other people's filth, or worse, your soul is heavy with their sins. From the Roman fullers who washed clothes in buckets of human urine, to the medieval sin-eaters who devoured bread placed on corpses. These were forgotten laborers of humanity's darkest needs, and their stories will make you grateful you're alive today. We like to imagine history through the eyes of kings, warriors, and philosophers, but this is not their story. This is the story of the forgotten. The slaves, the butchers, the rat catchers, and corpse burners who made ancient civilizations function at a horrifying cost. Their jobs were often dirty, deadly, and cursed. Yet someone had to do them. Because empires don't rise on glory alone. They rise on the backs of those forced to clean, bury, burn, and bleed. Tonight, we step into a world where the price of a meal was dignity, and the cost of a living was purity itself. Let's begin with the job that made even Romans hold their breath. The fuller, washing clothes in human urine. In the heart of ancient Rome, a strange smell lingered, sharp, sour, unmistakable. It wasn't sewage or decay. It was the smell of clean laundry. Because in Rome, the secret to spotless white robes wasn't soap or perfume. It was human urine. The men who handled it were called fullers, the unspoken heroes of Roman hygiene, and the victims of one of history's most nauseating professions. While noble citizens paraded in shining togas, these men toiled in open vats filled with human waste, scrubbing, stomping, and rinsing the filth away, using filth itself. Human urine contains ammonia, a powerful natural cleanser. It broke down grease, dissolved stains, and bleached fabric far better than anything else available in the ancient world. The Romans, practical as ever, discovered this and built an entire industry around it. Across the city, large amphorae or collection jars were placed outside public toilets and bathhouses. Citizens relieved themselves into them, unknowingly fueling one of Rome's dirtiest yet most necessary trades. Once full, the jars were hauled to Phalonicae, the laundries of ancient Rome. Inside, barefoot workers stood in shallow vats filled with a mix of water and urine. They stomped the clothes like grapes, over and over, sometimes for hours. The liquid soaked their legs, splashing onto their skin, seeping into cuts, and burning their flesh with ammonia's sting. The air was unbearable. Even in open courtyards, the reek of fermenting urine clung to everything. The walls, the fabric, the workers' hair. They couldn't escape it. Their bodies carried the scent home, branding them as urine men wherever they went. The wealthy despised them, yet depended on them. Fullers cleaned the garments of senators, generals, and emperors. They whitened the robes worn in temples and triumphs, the same robes that symbolized Roman purity. But perhaps the cruelest irony came from the Emperor Vespasian himself. When the empire needed money, he found a solution in the unlikeliest of places. He placed a tax on urine collection, forcing fullers to pay for the very waste they needed to work. When his son Titus mocked him for profiting from such filth, Vespasian famously held up a coin and said, "Pecunia non olet," money does not stink. The phrase became immortal, a Roman joke with a rotten truth. Because for fullers, money did stink. It reeked of every amphora they emptied, every vat they stomped in, every robe they cleaned for the powerful. Their work caused constant sores, rashes, and infections. The ammonia burned their lungs. Many lost their sense of smell entirely, a cruel blessing in disguise. But no one praised them. No monuments, no glory. Only the endless stench of labor that never ended. Still, their trade was indispensable. Without them, Rome's togas would turn yellow and rot. Without them, the empire's image of grandeur, its pure white symbol of civilization, would crumble beneath its own dirt. So when you picture the gleaming white robes of Roman senators, remember this: that brilliance came from filth. That purity was paid for in stench. And for the men who worked the vats, the smell of success was literally the stench of pee. The fuller scrubbed away the stains of the living. But some stains can't be washed with water or even urine, because while the Romans cleansed their clothes, the medieval world tried to cleanse the soul. And for that, They turned to a person who carried more than dirt on their hands. They carried the weight of the dead sins. The sin eater, consuming the dead sins. In the quiet corners of medieval Europe, where superstition ruled stronger than scripture, death was not the end. It was a burden, and for some, that burden could be eaten. They called them sin eaters, desperate, half-starved souls who made a living by devouring the sins of the dead. When a person died, their family feared the worst, that their loved one's soul might wander, weighed down by unconfessed sins. So they called for a sin eater. He arrived quietly, often at night, his face hidden beneath a hood or cloak. He was not greeted with kindness, only necessity. The ritual was simple and horrifying. A piece of bread and a cup of ale were placed on the corpse's chest. The food was believed to absorb the dead person's sins, like a sponge soaking up guilt. Then, in front of the grieving family, the sin eater took his place beside the body. He whispered a few ancient words, half prayer, half curse, and ate. With every bite, the family watched in terrified reverence. They believed that with each swallow, another sin was transferred from the dead to the living, from soul to flesh. The sin eater became a vessel for the damned. And when the ritual ended, the payment came, a single coin, a crust of bread, or a bowl of soup. Then he was cast out again, alone, burdened by the sins of others. To society, the sin eater was both necessary and cursed. He was the last hope for salvation, and the first to be condemned. People crossed themselves when he passed. Children threw stones. Priests refused him communion. For though he cleansed others, he was believed to grow darker with every ritual, his soul blackened by the weight of hundreds of sins. Some said his eyes began to change, that those who looked too long saw the faces of the dead staring back. Others swore he muttered to himself at night, speaking with the voices of the damned. He was a man both feared and forgotten. No one invited him to feast or festival. He walked the edges of towns, half ghost, half man. But when death came, and it always did, people still sent for him, because even the purest hearts feared the fires of hell. The sin eater's life was a living death. He carried hundreds of souls within him, never cleansed, never forgiven. And when his time came, no priest would bless him. No one dared eat his sins. Many were buried in unmarked graves, their names erased, feared even after death. Villagers whispered that on stormy nights, their spirits wandered, still hungry, still searching for one last bite of absolution. Though historians debate whether the practice was real or symbolic, its legend survived for centuries, a grim reflection of guilt, fear, and human desperation. Because when faith turned to fear, people would do anything to save a soul, even if it meant feeding another to darkness. So the next time you see bread laid upon a coffin in an old churchyard, remember this. It might once have been an offering not for the living, but for the damned. The fuller washed away filth with urine. The sin eater washed away sins with flesh. Two souls from different worlds, one drowned in stench, the other in sorrow, yet both bound by the same ancient curse, to clean what others refuse to touch. In every civilization, someone had to do the work no one else would. They were shunned, mocked, forgotten, but without them, there would be no purity, no salvation, no civilization at all. We often dream of the good old days, but history whispers a darker truth. The past wasn't noble. It was necessary, and survival always had a price.